So, Kristen, I have been looking forward to this for a long time. What's the name of your role?
Operations manager.
Operations manager.
Yeah.
I'm Jeremy, of course. But I have a photo here, if you're
Okay.
ready. I'd like to share this photo with you. And I took this, and I know for sure it was around the time you first started, but I'm fairly certain it might have been your very first day. But I want you to tell me about this photo, just what comes to mind.
Okay.
And there's no wrong answer. So you ready?
Okay. Yeah, that was week 1, and I can tell because of Matt's shirt.
Tell me more.
So I can't prove it, but I have this theory that he has an unintentional rotation of what he wears to work depending on his stress levels. So that was like the beginning of the week of my first week. Yeah.
We will have to hear more about that. However, first week, so
Yeah.
tell me about that.
Yeah, it was kind of a crazy week in general because I walked in. That was still my old dinosaur of a laptop that I set up, and immediately Matt was like, "We're gonna have to get you a new one," because it sounded like it was about to explode off the ground. But no, there wasn't really even space, so we had to like move furniture around to set up a table, and that's when I knew I was in like kind of the right spot.
So what were you doing? Like, what was your job? I mean,
We didn't know.
that's why I asked. Like, I know there was like a sense of like an executive assistant kind of.
So yeah,
What was that like?
when Matt and Harley originally called me, so they had originally wanted me to do sales. And they were like, we've heard a lot about your ability to negotiate. We want you to be sales, and they were recruiting me pretty hard. And I was like, nah, I don't think sales is the right fit. And then they called me a couple months later and were like, we need an executive assistant. And I was like, is this an administrative role? And they're like, no, you're not just taking notes. It's like, cool. So what is it? And they're like, we don't know. So I was like, okay. So essentially, I started piecing together that they were growing really fast and needed a lot of support. And it sounded like it would be taking some projects off of their plate, but it sounded like there was also a good bit of chaos happening. And that's the kind of stuff I love. So it sounded
And so that was a recruiting.
Yeah, that worked for me.
Oh, chaos.
Yes.
Undefined problems.
It sounded like it was a new opportunity to define what an executive assistant would be for this company, but it also sounded like an opportunity to support some really cool people. And if there's an opportunity to help people accomplish a dream that you can tell that they believed in and that they had compassion mixed into the middle of that, I was like, cool, whatever this job ends up being, I would love to jump into that vision. And then the actual assistant role, I got to try to flesh out a little bit more of defining what the role is, what it could be, and trying to essentially just bring order out of the chaos. So sometimes that meant trying to actually encourage Matt to get up and see sunshine for 10 minutes out of the day.
Yeah.
Other times that meant taking on some big projects, and that may not have even been identified as projects previously, to cast a vision of how this could start working better and start trying to move the pieces to make that happen. So it felt a little bit more expanded than the typical assistant role, but I loved that. So
The thin candy shell around the role, though, to a lot of people here,
Yeah.
they didn't see, I don't know, some of us did. We
Yeah.
worked together a lot during that time.
yes,
And Harley and Zeke and
Yeah.
Lori and and others. But the thin candy shell was, this
Yeah.
is Matt's assistant.
yes,
And navigating that, you have the future in mind of what happened, where you took this and where you were able to succeed.
Yeah.
But like at that moment, what was going through your head? Because you had done kind of some pretty cool things, and you really did. I'm not trying to reduce it. I mean, of course, I was an advocate for
Yeah.
recognizing the work you were doing, but
Yeah.
like at the time,
yeah.
was there tension there on that, navigating it to some degree for yourself? Like,
Yeah, that's a great question. At times, for sure, there were. I had come from a pretty substantial career in the nonprofit world of establishing affordable housing throughout Central Ohio, not just Columbus, and learning how to negotiate and how to build a program and build a team from the ground up, being able to house 300 people with only $50,000. So those are the kind of projects I was doing in the scope of the work that I was doing. And then coming into this role as an assistant where it's there are always going to be the unglamorous sides of work. So some of the unglamorous parts might have felt like taking notes in a meeting or running to get people coffee, or, you know, being the one to answer the door if someone's knocking. The benefit to
Ordering
that,
creamer.
though, yeah, ordering creamer.
Right,
No,
that's a
legitimately,
real thing. Like
ordering
someone's
staplers.
ordering it. It's like,
Someone's
okay,
gotta make it happen.
does Harley do? You know, it's
Yeah.
like we were so small.
Correct.
Somebody had to
Yeah.
do those things, and it sometimes fell.
Right.
But at the same time, you came from. So you
Yeah.
sorry, I interrupted. You said you were navigating that was
Yeah.
at times.
Yeah, at times, of course, there was some friction there, especially considering I don't think anyone fully knew what the role was going to be. So when that happens, there's a natural junk drawer association. I don't mean that negatively, but it's if there are a lot of tasks that need covered and a lot of them feel lower priority and they need to go somewhere, an assistant role naturally becomes a lot of the magnet for a lot of that. So of course there was some natural
Kind of not
tension.
it. It's like not it, and the person left.
Yeah.
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 So, if you don't mind, I want to move back from this photo a little bit because
Yeah.
you've teased some. I know these stories, but
Yeah.
I don't know that I know them.
Yeah.
And so, you said housing 300 people with $50,000. You mentioned compassion earlier. You mentioned your logistics background, and you also
Yeah.
mentioned nonprofit.
Yeah.
So my curiosity is in this moment is like, what was the essence of that work that you were doing? It was so different. What was the
Yeah.
essence of that? What were you kind of doing, and then what drew you to that?
Yeah, ultimately there are two parts to it. I care about people, and I care about people in a way that I want it to be authentic, and I want it to actually create change, not in a way that it feeds an ego as if it's creating help, but it's how do we allow our communities to actually thrive and to actually flourish. There have been so many people throughout my own life that by stepping in just a little bit have provided opportunities for my family to really start to thrive and also continue to be a part of community. But I've also seen, I started traveling when I was pretty young. I was about 17 when I started traveling internationally. And then I hit 7 countries by the time I was done with college. And I spent months at a time in those different countries. And what I was trying to do was learn from all of the other cultures and ways of life. And what it ultimately taught me was that in the States, we isolate a lot. And what we do is separate the for-profit and the nonprofit world. We separate the public and private sector, and we separate human services and day-to-day business. And what we're missing is the greater connection of what actually allows a country and a culture to thrive. And I've seen firsthand change actually take place and how incredible that can be when that happens. And I've also seen how the intent to provide help has harmed more than it's hurt here and abroad. So my passion became, how do we create something that actually provides a positive benefit and it points to that bigger picture of thriving for a community? That's what I'm passionate about. What that takes is a very high level of collaboration. It also takes science. And my half of my brain, so there's the compassion side that is married to and at times at war with the scientific brain of how do you actually study the data behind every single one of the moves that it takes for that position of thriving to happen.
Right.
So that's when I started to pivot. So I went and got a master's degree because up until that point, everything I had was more soft skills and I wanted the science. I wanted to know that the empirical data that I had been gathering up to that point, I could actually start to use and make it a tool. So I went and studied to get a human services degree that studied organizationally and socially how to create that kind of a change, how to measure it, how to study it, how to duplicate it. I think we all want to know, is change possible? Is it possible for there to be a purpose out in the world that we are all fighting towards, that we can actually see happen and it can actually be what we want it to be? When you put together the causality behind this action leads to this, and then also all of the triggers and mechanisms in between, it looks simple, like you're pushing one button, but you are actually pulling all these different levers over months of time and strategy and teamwork to make that one button possible.
It's mousetrap.
Correct. It's kind of like launching a spaceship. The one moment that everybody loves to look at is when you push that button and it launches. But when you think about what it takes to even put the wires together to get that button connected to the launch, that doesn't even cover the 20,000 years
Yeah.
of research and science and expertise that it's taken to get that to launch. That is what creating change is all about. How do you do that expertly? It comes together at that one moment of a button, but the whole process behind that is addicting. It's fascinating, especially when you get to bring really quality, talented people that understand their pieces and parts better than you ever will, all together for that one moment. Right.
You want to be in the business of making change.
Right.
You're doing the work that you have always been set
Yeah.
up to do. But what was the path and how did you get there? That's I'd love to hear your take on that.
I think one of the most powerful things that set me up for success here was, and the reason why I took the job from the start as an assistant, Matt and Harley both made sure to vet that I was the kind of personality where if they made a decision that for any reason seemed off, that I would speak up and say something. And having a leader, a CEO and a director of operations who were opening that kind of a door to someone who is an assistant is wild.
Because the assistant problem that we were talking about, which can be, it's a one-way comm.
Right.
It's like, I will tell you
Correct.
and you will be seen, not heard.
Correct.
They never had that with you.
Correct.
Okay,
No.
yeah.
So from the gate, it was something that was collaborative. And it was an opportunity that Matt especially kept making sure that I had, where he would very humbly ask, like, what my take was on some of the circumstances
great.
that he was wading through. And that helped significantly because I loved being able to sit in the room as he was navigating some tough decisions, as he was navigating the exciting new business that was like continuing to grow, and just soaking it all in like a sponge of learning. And of course, there were still those days where it's like you receive your instruction and you do the job. But the culture and baseline function that I think is what I know has made us so successful here at Exact is that we are all pushing each other to be more excellent. This like strange hierarchy of I say thus beeth the next step. We are all here trying to help each other be better and to pitch more ideas, which is what has created us to be more innovative constantly. And that has helped push my trajectory here for sure. And then also there were other champions like you.
Well, I think it's clear I was digging for a compliment. Yeah. No.
But what I will say, to not make you too uncomfortable, is that there were a couple of very key people who recognized my skill set and took the time to talk with me, to encourage me, and to make sure that what was in my brain I was able to put out into the world in an effective way. And that was something that you especially championed, which made a big difference at a pivotal moment.
What's going on right now? Like, what's happening?
That's a great question. I think it's a funny question because there was one day right before the transition to this job that Marcus, shout out to EBS Marcus,
Yeah.
was like,
Medicare Marcus?
yeah, Medicare Marcus. He was like, I don't think anyone actually knows what you fully do here. It's like, that is true.
What is this? Show clarity. Jeremy, shut up.
But we had the chance to start recording those onboarding videos. And when he saw all the work that I was doing behind the scenes, it was the first, I think, light bulb moment that I had with someone who was on a different side of the world of Exact,
Yes.
of what the work was that I was doing. So to answer your question, the work that I do now, it's a lot. That's a short answer. So the basics look like establishing regular check-ins with every single department. What I am scanning for is what resources are needed that they don't currently have to continue doing the excellent work that they are doing at a more efficient and impactful rate. We have very talented leaders, and I think the danger with operations is if someone takes operations and tries to wield it like a hammer of do better and too much accountability without the ability for someone to have the authority to do their work. My approach to operations is we have talented people here who are excellent at what they do. What do you need to keep going? And not just keep going, but can this be a space where we are constantly thinking creatively about the work and to stay on that drive and that passion? And then within that, taking the skill set that I do have of process and efficiency and change to kind of inject that into the work to try to keep propelling these good ideas forward. So these check-ins look like pulling a lot of those status updates in context. What I'm actually doing is logging every single difficulty, every single break, every single success, and I'm starting to measure over time what those efficiencies, inefficiencies, and trends are to make sure that departments have the time, attention, and resources that they need. So a lot of the work looks like managing quite a few different projects that everybody has on their plate, but it's actually weaving together the whole picture and making sure that we are all headed in the same direction.
So we've clearly got photos, 24 photos per second, right? That's what a video is for us, 24 frames per second. If we take one of these photos and we get together a year from now or 2 years from now and we say, hey, remember this moment right here?
Yeah.
What do you think that time is going to look like?
That's an exciting question because I truly believe that we are entering the next wave of what Exact looks like, what operations looks like.
Click, 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 click.
Yes,
click. Yeah,
exactly.
It's like, oh.
Everyone can feel it. And right now, sometimes it feels pretty strongly like those growing pains. But what's happening is that we are shifting from gut to data-informed decisions. We are consistently collaborating together more tightly and more effectively in our different sprints. We are establishing the change funnel, which means that any big change that we do is now being scoped to make sure that we are catching breaks before they happen, being monitored along the way, and then actually measuring to see, was this a good idea? If it was a good idea, let's replicate this in a different way. If it wasn't a good idea, let's kick that to the curb and not do it again, which means we can continue to do something that's not been done before, which is stay agile, stay innovative, and keep doing these changes at a higher rate while increasing our efficiency and our ability to handle these things more smoothly. We're getting stronger and better as we go. We are finally starting to address some of these foundational cracks, and we're just gonna keep getting better at what we're doing. So I'm very excited to see where we're at in 6 months from now, let alone a year. Because in addition to all of that, our teams are getting stronger. We have more and more personnel being added to our different teams. Because when I was sitting here at this desk, each department had one person. Like training was non-existent. There wasn't even a training department.
Zeke and I were in the claw office together.
You guys were in the claw
There's a
office?
hallway closet that no one that's not here would know.
Yeah.
In our,
Yeah.
you know, I'm Brandon Creative. Zeke is VP of technology, and
Yes.
we didn't like the big lights, so we took the bulb out, and we're sitting next to each other in basically a little counter.
Right.
You're on a card table
Yep.
in Matt's office.
Yep. Yes.
I mean, that was minutes ago.
Right.
It's a year ago.
Right.
You know, or whatever.
Yeah. Compliance was one person, and now it's this whole really powerful team.
Yeah. Compliance was a memo, and now it's this really responsible, competent group of people who are watching every call, looking after the agents, and
Exactly.
training.
Yes.
Just
Yeah.
unbelievable.
We're leveling up, and it's exciting to see because we're not just leveling up in the number of hands, we're leveling up continuously with the talent we have, because not only is it gaining new people, but the atmosphere here is, what book are you reading right now for your job? What podcast really stuck with you that's making a difference? That's the vibe and the nature that keeps, you know, the mojo going.
Yeah.
Like, it's cool stuff that's happening. So I'm really excited.
So make a prediction. Let's see. You're not in the prediction business.
Not in the prediction.
Yeah, but what is this? What is it? What is that moment going to look like? Give me one or two things you're going to call, because I want to see it when that happens. We'll see if we got it.
Onboarding is going to be smooth.
Yeah. It's easy to get hired and work here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not just hired and work here, but feel the dream that we're all fighting for and want to participate in it.
Vision's clear.
Yes, vision is clear. And then alongside the extreme growth, which my prediction is we will only continue to grow, both corporate and sales. So mark that down, universe. One thing that's made us magical since we started out as a startup where anybody was willing to plunge a toilet is that we also know each other really, really, really well. And part of that magic, I don't think we're going to lose. I think we're going to get better at. But we're going to build it into the system along the way. So that's a prediction that I hope doesn't leave. I also predict that we will be excellent at reporting the stuff that's not as exciting to say but makes a huge difference. Excellent at data. And the rest I'll leave to everybody else.
This is not what I saw coming, but even better.
Cool.
So awesome. Thanks for the chat.